So weird, eh? Okay, guys, I'm gonna read the story, so I don't want to keep you waiting. This horrible story you've been blabbing about in Discord. Yes. Do you guys want to know what it's called? Do you want to know what it's called? Let me pull it up. It is called Deadly Lust. You ready? I'm not sure if I'm like dead set on that name, but it's what came to mind when I was writing it. So I was like, I'm gonna stick with this for now because it's like what popped in my head. Oop, Deadly Lust. Brie, are you ready for this? I'm so excited to read this to you guys. And again, this is first draft. This is unedited. It will be better when I edit it. This is just what came to my mind, what I wrote out today, and that's it. Love the name. Okay, guys. Are you ready? I'm going to try to read the first part without laughing just because you'll see why. You guys know the first sentence already. So, here we go, guys. I know you've been a bad girl. You need to be punished. The long leather belt snapped between his hands. The man's red plaid shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He walked closer to Bree, who sat on the bed in her black teddy. Her chocolate brown and luscious hair draped down to her shoulders. The man approached the bed and placed his hand firmly on Bree's shoulder, pushing her down on the bed and climbing over her. His left hand held him up over her body, left knee up on the bed beside her thigh, his right leg still on the floor, belt in hand. He raised his hand, holding the belt up above his head, and smirked at Bree. He then brought his hand down fast and hard, smacking the space on the bed beside Bree's head, sorry. The sound of the snap from the belt rang in Bree's ear as she smiled back, feeling tingly all over her body. Punish me, Daddy Grum, she whispered. Grum's smile grew wider as he stood up, dropping the belt on the floor. He slowly began unzipping his pants. Bree and Grum kept eye contact as he undressed, bending over once to grab a silk purple bag and bringing it back to the bed. Let's see what's in the bag of goodies. Grum opened the bag and shuffled around until he found what he was looking for. Knock, knock. Who the hell is that? Bree felt startled and sat up quickly, too quickly, accidentally knocking heads with Grum. Ouch! Grum stood up on the floor, holding his head. I'm so sorry, that just scared me. Bree held her head with both hands, grimacing in pain. Grum grabbed his boxers laying on the floor and slipped them on, stumbling in the process. He then walked to the door of their hotel room and looked through the peephole. All that was seen was an empty hall. Grum unlocked the top lock and then the handle and opened the door slowly. What is Wattpad? Opening it just enough to poke his head through and look down the hall to his left and then to his right. He looked down to the mat outside of their room and had seen a bucket of ice with a bottle of wine. Did you order a bottle of wine? He looked over to Bree, still holding her head. No, I didn't get anything. Grum looked back at the bucket and shrugged his shoulders as he picked it up and brought it into the room. Well, free wine, I guess. He placed the bucket on the counter beside the bathroom. Sorry, guys. I wouldn't mind a glass. Bree stood up and headed for the wine glasses sitting on the counter beside the coffee pot. She picked up the bottle and popped the lid. Just pour me a little, enough to toast. I already had some rum. Grum slid off his boxers and walked over to Bree. To us, having fun, living life, and to Bree thought for a moment. To amazing and crazy sex with the woman that I love. Happy anniversary. Grum pulled Bree in closer by her neck, kissing her lips softly and pulling back just enough to look into her eyes as they took a sip from their cups. Someone is excited. Bree looked down between herself and Grum. It's an app, homemade stories. Oh. Grum took Bree's cup and placed them both down on the counter and grabbed Bree by the neck with his right hand, pushing her against the wall, then pressing his own body against hers. His left hand caressed her hair as they both kissed. Knock, knock. Damn it! Grum took a deep breath in and walked back to the door. He looked out the peephole and seen nothing. Who is it? Bree walked up behind him. There isn't anyone there. Grum opened the door a crack, enough for his head to pop out again. Empty halls. He looked down to the mat. There was a plate with 2 chocolates and a note. Grum picked up the plate and brought it in. What does the note say? Bree followed close behind Grum, curiously looking at the plate. Grum picked up the note and read it out loud. It's your choice when to stop. You are in control. What the hell does that mean? Bree grabbed the note from Grum's hand and looked at it. Grum placed the plate down beside the wine when they were both startled. A blood-curdling scream came from the room beside them. Bree grabbed onto Grum's hand as they stood in fear. The screaming continued. It sounded like a woman. Please, no, stop! Someone help me! Banging, thumping, and screaming. Grum ran to the door and locked both locks. Bree held her mouth shut with trembling hands. Grum ran to the phone and picked it up. The phones are down, Grum whispered, looking fearfully to Bree. The screaming stopped at the last big thud against the wall that had echoed throughout the hotel room. Silence. Grum and Bree stood completely still, their hearts beating rapidly against their chest. Bree continued to hold her mouth closed, trying not to breathe too loudly. Her legs began trembling. Knock, knock, knock. Grum's eyes grew wide as his attention was fixated on the door. Bree grabbed his arm. Do not, she began speaking loudly, but stopped herself and lowered her tone to a whisper. Do not touch that door. Tears began welling in her eyes. Grum looked back at the door and stepped away. Knock, knock, knock. They both looked at each other, then back at the door. The door's locked. We should be fine. Grum tried to reassure Bree, even though he was completely terrified. Bang, bang, bang. Knock, knock, knock. Banging came from the room the woman was screaming in. Then the next room beside them, continuous banging on both walls and knocking at the door. Tears began streaming down Bree's face, who could no longer control the fear. It came flooding out as she held her ears and began screaming. Grum walked to the door but had seen no one, the door shaking from the pounding. What do you want? What do you want from us? Grum yelled at the top of his lungs as Bree continued to scream. Silence. Bree stopped screaming, but whimpered loudly as she continued to cry and shake uncontrollably. I think I need to check the door. His voice trembled. It was the last thing he wanted to do, but he knew whoever was knocking wanted him to open the door. No, please don't do it. Don't do it, Grum. Bree pulled his arm and held on tightly. Bree, stop it. Stay back there. Lock yourself in the bathroom if you have to. I have to see or they won't stop. Grum pried her hands off of him and headed for the door. Bree stood back against the wall, praying to herself. Grum's hand shook terribly as he unlocked the door and slowly opened it. This time, he looked down to the mat first, seeing a dish covered with another note on it. He picked up the dish and looked down both halls to the room beside them. Again, nothing but empty halls. Hoya! Hoya! There you go. From fear or other reasons? Fear. My legs are trembling. This. Okay, guys. He quickly shut and locked the door and brought the plate in and set it on the edge of the bed. He paced for a moment, thinking. Don't open it. Don't do it. Don't open it. We don't know what's in there. Bree held out her hand, motioning for him to back away from it. I am fucking scared too, all right? But the first two were chocolates and wine. It can't be that bad. He spoke confidently, but behind that confidence was terror. Grum then looked down as he felt a chill. Damn it, hold on. He forgot to put his boxers back on. He scanned the room and found them near the desk. He walked over and picked them up. If anything bad happens, I don't want to be friggin' naked, he said, trying to joke and lighten the situation. Bree did not laugh. Grum walked back up to the plate and hovered Grum walked back up to the plate and hovered his hand over the lid handle. Wait. Read the letter. The letter first. Bree picked up the letter and held it out. Grum took the letter from Bree and opened it. Do you want it to stop yet? Grum dropped the note and reached out for the lid. He slowly and carefully lifted the lid as if it were made of thin glass, porcelain ready to crack under the smallest of pressure. Bree looked at the plate in horror. Grum lifted up a blood-covered ball gag, teeth scattered all over. He stood holding the bloodied gag for a moment while his brain was trying to process the image in front of him. Then he quickly dropped it to the ground and backed into the wall. What the fuck? What the fuck? He quickly rubbed his hands off on his boxers vigorously and began gagging at the sight of the blood and teeth. Ah, fuck! A voice from the other side of the wall began screaming, louder than the woman's voice. This time it was a man. It fucking hurts! Stop! Stop! The voice continued to scream. Bree stumbled to the corner of the hotel room, grabbing the pillow off the bed and wrapping it around her head, crouching in the corner. Her tears and cries were drowned out by the man's painful and gut-wrenching yelling. Grum stood, eyes wide, staring at the wall, not moving an inch. Silence. Knock, knock, knock. This time, Grum ran to the door. He bolted for it. He ripped it wide open, smacking it off the wall. This time, a trolley lay in front of the hotel door. The lights began to flicker. Grum grabbed the trolley and pulled it in and shut the door behind him. Bree looked up and saw the trolley Grum had been pushing towards the bed. No, no, no! Stop! We need to just leave and get out of here. We can't open it. I don't want to see anything else. Please, can we just go? I want to go home. Bree got down on her knees in front of Grum and begged for him to leave it. Yeah, let's go, he said without much thought, void of all emotion. His eyes were vacant in shock. They grabbed their jackets and left everything else behind. Bree frantically threw her arms into her jacket as she stumbled towards the door. Grum reached out for the door to open it. What are you doing? Open the fucking door! Bree pushed on Grum's back. I can't, he said. What the fuck do you mean you can't? Move! Bree pushed Grum over and began pulling and tugging at the door as hard as she could. The handle turned so it wasn't locked, and the chain hung down at the top unattached. Grum looked back at the trolley sitting beside the bed. I think we need to open it, Bree. We don't have a choice. Grum turned to look at Bree, the bubbly, beautiful, and happy woman he fell in love with. Her beautiful brown eyes were bloodshot and red, puffy, terror raging and wreaking havoc within her soul. She was so scared. Grum placed his hand on her face and slowly caressed her cheek as a tear fell. Grum let Bree go and headed for the trolley. The note on the top read, Are you ready to stop it yet? Is it time? On the trolley lay different platters, all covered by napkins and lids. Bree walked up behind Grum, still keeping distance from him. Okay, I'm gonna start uncovering it. 4 plates covered on the top. Grum chose the middle napkin to lift. Bree covered her mouth and gagged, but her eyes never left the plate. A black whip lay bloodied and covered in what looked like human flesh. "Oh God," he said, looking away and taking a deep breath. He lifted another napkin. A piece of scalp with knotted and tangled clump of hair lay on another plate. "Grum, oh my God, I want to go home, please!" Bree began hysterically crying. Screaming from the sides of the walls began again. The woman and the man began screaming at the top of their lungs. Bree screamed with them as she pulled at her hair and fell to her knees in the middle of the hotel room. "I want it to stop! I'm done! I'm done! I want it to stop now!" Grum yelled as he ripped off the rest of the napkins and lids, exposing a severed human tongue, more teeth, and clotted blood. He picked up the human remains and began throwing them around the room. "I said I wanted to stop! You said we are in control! I'm done! I'm done! You hear me?" The screaming didn't stop. Knock, knock, knock. Grum ran to the door and tried tugging and pulling. His body slammed into the door and punched it until his knuckles were raw and bloody. He then looked down to the ground where a letter slid from under the crack of the door. His hands, bloody and trembling, picked up the paper. "Eat the chocolate and it will all be over. It's your choice. You are in control." Grum dropped the paper and ran for the plate on the counter. "It's almost over, guys." The two chocolates lay on the plate still, two small and perfectly square chocolates. He picked them up in his hand and took them to Bree, who still sat kneeling in the middle of the room, screaming. "Bree, Bree, listen to me!" Grum grabbed her face and looked in her eyes. "We have to eat this. Then it will all be over. We need to eat it, and it stops, okay?" "How do you know? I just wanted to stop, please!" she cried. "Just trust me, okay? Take this. I love you." Grum began crying as he slid the chocolate into his mouth and guided Bree's hand to do the same. Grum wrapped his arms around Bree and held her tightly as they both lay down on the carpeted floor, screams slowly fading into the background until there was finally silence. "Hey, Rowdy, how long has it been?" Boss Man asked as he got into the car with two coffees. "It's been about 2 hours. I think it's time to go check on them. I left the notes for them. They're probably tripping balls right now. I left the laxatives as well. They're probably shitting up a storm, the poor buggers." Rowdy laughed as he took a sip of coffee. "What's that?" Bossman looked up the street from the parked car outside the hotel. "Police, looks like. They're driving pretty fast," he said, still drinking his coffee. Rowdy and Bossman watched as three police cars screeched to a halt outside the hotel, ambulance and fire not far behind. "You don't think... You think they're okay?" Bossman looked at the window as the police officers rushed inside the building. "No. It's probably something else. It can't be them, right?" "I don't know, Rowdy. What the hell did you put in that wine?" Bossman looked at Rowdy with concern. "I don't know. Just a few random things I had in my stash. Nothing they haven't tried before," he said with unease. "A few things? I don't think you should have mixed a few things. What the hell was in it?" Bossman began to panic. Rowdy got out of the car and began sprinting to the hotel. He ran past a few staff members crying and vomiting in the trash cans. He ran to the stairs and ran to the second floor and down the hall to room 345, where police were standing outside. Rowdy looked at some of the officers. Some walked out gagging and holding their faces. Fuck, fuck, fuck! Rowdy picked up speed and ran to the room. "Sir, you can't go in there," an officer yelled as Rowdy pushed through and fell into the room. Rowdy was hit with an overwhelming reek of human feces and iron. He lifted his head, staring at a bloodied carpet. When he looked around the room, blood covered the walls, beds, and floors. Whips, belts, and other toys lay scattered along with a blood-covered purple silk bag. He looked over to Grum and Bree holding each other, pieces of their flesh missing from their bodies, blood and fecal matter surrounding them. Rowdy stood up and backed away, missing the door and bumping into the wall. A piece of scalp with hair attached to it fell from the wall and onto his shoulder. Rowdy looked to his shoulder and began screaming, wiping it off and running from the room. He stumbled into the walls and headed for the stairs. He forced himself through the door and tripped on the hall carpet, plummeting headfirst down the stairs. A loud crack rang through Rowdy's ears as his head hit the marble tile and he loses consciousness. 12 days later. Bossman sat in the middle of a courtroom dressed in an orange jumpsuit, hands bound by handcuffs. He looked to the man dressed in a suit sitting beside him. Look, I'm telling the truth. We didn't mean for anything to happen. It was a joke, I swear. Bossman was interrupted by the bailiff. All rise. And the end. That's it, guys. Okay, seriously. I think that one was pretty good. Hey, Powers, how are you? How much of that story did you hear, Powers? Was it okay? That's the first draft, guys. That's literally what I wrote today. So, like, that's it. Oh yeah?
What did you do, Sarah?
Sarah, come on, was that not like scary? That was pretty good.
My goodness. I was like, what? Did they die? They obviously didn't die. No.
Oh, they died.
Did they die?
Yeah.
Not what I meant.
They did die?
Oh yeah, they died, and Rowdy died too.
Sarah.
Rowdy died by falling down the stairs, right?
Yeah, head first into the marble floor. Like that would fucking
Right.
hurt.
And what? Grum and Bree killed each other? Or Grum?
Well, it was
Basically?
the drugs. Like all that, the screaming was actually themselves. Like that was them inside their minds. Like totally tripping fucking balls. The screaming was them. You know how sometimes when people are tripping out on like drugs, and some people like will jump off buildings because they think they can fly, or they'll scratch their skin
Yeah,
off
yeah.
because they think, like that type of stuff. That's what's going on. That screaming was themselves screaming. Those pieces, they were like, because they were into the BDSM type shit, whatever. They had the bag and hyped up on that drugs. They were like they fucked each other up real bad. And then they ate the laxatives. That's why they were covered in shit, because they also shit themselves as they were dying.
So they had bath salts.
Sarah.
Yeah, what?
Sarah.
You said you wanted
Rowdy, that's
people
what
to
you did.
die. Okay, that's not true, Rowdy, because Caitlyn and Albino died in their story.
Let's go!
So
Did I die?
yeah, you died. Remember, Michelle like made Caitlyn chicken breast with her new girlfriend at the very end.
I got
Oh,
my
yeah.
dick cut off.
You have your what?
What about the other one, the asylum? I didn't die then. I was just cray-cray.
Yeah, you're just crazy. But you weren't crazy. That doctor was
They
making you
made me
crazy
crazy.
with those
Yeah.
pills. So you didn't die. But yeah, you were going crazy. But like, listen, when you ask me, I've already said this. I'm like the Wishmaster. I don't know if any of you have seen that movie, but you got to
Yeah.
be careful what you wish for. Remember when he's like, I wish my lawyer would fuck himself? And then when his lawyer finally found a way for him to get out of jail, his